You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market from unusual activity alerts to market analysis, strategy overviews, listener questions, and much more. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the Option Block with your host, Mark Longo from the Options Insider Media Group, and co-hosts, Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Management, along with Mark the Greasy Meatball Sebastian and Andrew the Rock Lobster Giovinazzi from OptionPit.com. And now, get ready to hit the Option Block.
All right, everybody. That music means we are back once again, commencing our broadcast week here on the Options Insider Radio Network. My name, of course, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as, of course, from the ever-exciting network upon which so many of you are binging right now. You know the drill. If you're listening on demand, as we know many of you are, first off, if you're just listening to the Option Block, make sure you upgrade to the full network. So wherever you get this, just search for the Option Insider Radio Network. Then you get all of our shows, nearly a dozen shows, usually a couple of shows coming at you a day. A lot more content that way. If you like what you hear, all we ask that you rate and review on the on-demand side. Of course, if you want even more options living packed into your life, including a great pro Q&A coming up later today. We got one and only Mr. Tony Saliba joining us a little bit later today. How much does he like you guys? Answering all of your options questions, as well as, of course, options oddities on Fridays, the giveaways, all the other good stuff, and a whole bunch more exclusive pro access to early shows. Like, you don't have to wait a week for this week's options boot camp. You already got it if you're a pro. You don't have to wait a week for this week's OPR huddle. You already got it if you're a pro. And you had a chance to listen live to that and to everything else that we do. Where do you go to get access to all that fun stuff? We're adding new wrinkles all the time. TheOptionsInsider.com/pro, or for you cool kids, /secret club. But remember, however you get there, don't tell anybody. It's a secret. Before we see who we're joined by today, of course, it is Monday, so we have to kick things off the way we like to do these days. And, you know, we like to guess that 80s wrestler. And, you know, we're coming off the heels of Mother's Day weekend. So I was thinking, you know, what are some ladies we can get in there from the 80s? There are no real mothers I could think of for the 80s WWE. When you think of 80s, the ladies wrestling in the 80s really wasn't what it is now. If you've seen Glow on Netflix, you know, there actually was, they fictionalized it, but there was really a Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling that used to air after usually the Saturday morning cartoons. So you'd see all these crazy ladies doing all this crazy stuff. But that was kind of the extent of ladies wrestling. When you think of ladies in the WWE in the 80s, it really comes down to a handful. And then there's one name in particular that leaps off the page. Just about everybody. All the young boys who were watching WWF in the 80s probably had a crush on this lady. She was their favorite lady that would come to the ring. She wasn't really a wrestler, but she was linked to one of the most iconic 80s wrestlers of all time. She didn't really have music. When she would come out, they would usually play his music, except for one time. There was a seminal event that really just shook and was celebrated throughout the wrestling world in the 80s. And she was one half of this event. And this is the music that they played for said event. Can you guess this 80s ladies, let's call her wrestler adjacent personality? coming up next here on our Name That 80s Wrestler segment.
When you came into my life, you made me realize I was the lucky one, and I've never felt like this before. No, baby, no. Together
there's your glimpse. There's your hint. I will now open it up to two of my fellow 80s wrestling aficionados, my compatriots here on the Monday episode. The greasiest of meatballs, Mr. Mark Sebastian from OptionPit.com. And the uncleest of Mikes, Mr. Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Management. When I open it up, when I say 3, 2, 1, go, one of them will yell buzz, and then they will have a chance to name this lady 80s wrestler, kind of adjacent, I suppose you can call her. If you want bonus points, you can name what event that song was from, and also the famous, iconic 80s wrestler that she was linked to. Here we go. 3, 2, 1, go.
Buzz.
Oh, Uncle Mike, if you don't get this one, sir, I may have to rethink our friendship, sir. And who are we talking about here?
So I guess I'm confused by the question. Do you want the singer or do you want the wrestler?
I don't even know who the singer is. I want the lady who that music is for when she came out, and also the event that this music was played for, if you have that. And then also, if you have it in your back pocket, the wrestler that she was linked with forever.
I'll go with Wendy Richter.
Wow. Okay. I guess I have to rethink our friendship, sir. I don't know. This is the most iconic lady of 80s wrestlers, Mr. Meatball.
The fabulous Moolah? Those were the only two that wrestled.
So I said she wasn't a wrestler, but she was linked to an iconic 80s wrestler. And so she would come to the ring with him. And they had this seminal event of 80s wrestling that this theme music was played for. It also kind of became a little bit of her theme music as well. Let's go out to the Southern Volatility Mecca now. Mr. Meatball, sir. Can you salvage Uncle Mike? Can you guess this iconic lady wrestling personality of the 80s?
That was from the wedding. It was Miss Elizabeth.
Yes.
It was Randy Savage.
Yes.
It was their wedding. And I believe that was Peebo Bryson singing the song as well.
Oh,
just for the bonus points.
Bonus points. Uncle Mike, do you feel suitably chastened and humbled now? How could you not guess Miss Elizabeth the first time out, sir?
And didn't she do, like, she iconically kicked, what's his face in between the legs? She kicked, oh no, that was, Linda McMahon kicked Vince McMahon in the you know what.
Yes, Miss Elizabeth, of course, linked to Macho Man forever. They had the iconic wedding. That's what that song was from. Otherwise, when she would come out, they would usually play the Macho Man music, which is Pomp and Circumstance, weirdly enough. He came out to Pomp and Circumstance. So yes, iconic Miss Elizabeth when they ended up breaking up. It broke hearts forever when she died tragically, I think in the house of Lex Luger as well, of an overdose years later. That was also very heartbreaking for the wrestling world. So there we go. Miss Elizabeth. So as close as we can get to Mother's Day here as we keep on rolling right on into the trading block.
It's time to break down the latest topics, trades, and trends in the world of options. It's time for the trading block.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the trading block, the portion of the show where we talk about what the heck is trading out there. And I don't know, Uncle Mike, man, after missing that Miss Elizabeth, I may have to make you go second for the rest of the month. That's just no bueno in the 80s wrestling game. But let's go around the horn. And you know what else is no bueno, listeners, are these markets, at least if you're on the bullish tip, because they are coming for it today. As we kick off the show, S&P off over 2.5%, 2.6%, Dow off about 1.75%, NASDAQ off 3.5%. Even more interestingly, we were talking for a while, 4,200. That was the level in the S&P. we couldn't really break, right? It seemed like we bounced off that a number of times, and we finally broke through it. Then we kind of vacillated around for a bit, rallied back up close to it, 4170. We're hanging out there. Today, they're coming for 4,000, and that's an interesting level, very psychologically important level. We bounced off it earlier this morning, starting to threaten it again out there. So interesting. Maybe we shall break through it even as the show commences here. That means all of our favorite vol products ticking a wee bit up here. VIX at about 34.25 when we kicked off. The show puts it up a little over 2.5, about 2.6 points from where it was this time on our last show. VVIX at about a 125, so staying right around what was the floor during a lot of the pandemic era, but what used to be kind of the ceiling for a lot of really active vol time. Right now, 125, so pretty frothy, up about almost 5 points, about 4 3/4 points from where it was on our last show. VXX, this product that kind of just does whatever the hell it wants these days, 27 3/4 right now, up 1.5 points. So it's trying to play ball. It's trying to do a little bit of tracking. I'll leave it up to you how good of a job it is doing out there. UVXY 18 3/4 up nearly 2 points, about 1.9 points from where it was on Monday's show. SVIX, the newest addition, or one of the two new additions to the vol landscape, was at about a 985 when we kicked off the show. That puts it down about 0.8 or so not quite a full point from where it was on our last show. And UVIX, our levered friend, was at about a 25.30 or so when we kicked off the show, puts it up about 3.5 points. And our old friend VolQ, aka the at the money vol of the NASDAQ 100, is at about a 37.25, puts it up about 2.5 points. So all this red on the broad market screens means we've got, a wee bit of green on the vol screens out there. Remember those levels I was talking about in the S&P? We're going to come back to that a little bit later in the show. We got a fun question of the week out there about that right now. But first, let's go around the horn. We will not start with Uncle Mike. That is his penance for swinging and missing on Miss Elizabeth. Mr. Meatball, any other enduring memories of the iconic Miss Elizabeth, one half of the Macho Man and Miss Elizabeth duo? And then B, what's catching your eye in today's bloodbath, sir?
Yeah, well, the way she got in between Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage.
Yes, the mega powers. The mega powers.
And the funny thing is, they had that wedding, and they were already married when that wedding happened.
Yes. Are you saying wrestling? Are you saying wrestling was perhaps enhancing the real world, or perhaps she was adding levels to it?
She was already Mrs. Paffa, and
they were getting ready to get a divorce.
I think they were getting ready to get a divorce. I think they were at each other's throats. But yes, definitely an interesting one.
Our chat chiming in saying Miss Elizabeth is the only hot lady they remember from WWE. Yes, I think a lot of young wrestling boys had their first crush on Miss Elizabeth. Mr. Meatball, sir, aside from the glory days of Miss Elizabeth, we can regale forever. A lot of red on the screen, a lot of ball on the screen today. What's lighting up your tape, sir?
Yeah, it's another bloodbath. We are about we're threatening 4,000 right now. Still, VIX not getting off the mat. We're not even at the highs for the year. We're at the lows for the year, and we're not at the highs for the year. Vol is not getting kind of the pop you might expect, and we're not seeing a lot of volatility trading action. Interestingly, it just feels like a slow, painful grind lower, and you got to wonder when it's all going to end. But this is just pain coming at the market right now. And like I said, I don't know when it's going to end, but yeesh.
That is a good technical term to sum up today's action. Yeesh. As we continue. Yeah, it seemed like for a while there, it seemed like 4,200 would be perhaps the salvation of the bulls. It would stem the bleeding. And then, of course, the Fed came out, and I don't know what to make of that rally outside of short-lived nonsense, as we kind of alluded to on vol views. You could expect a little bit of that. Rallied back north, I think, north of 4,300 for a while there. And now, of course, back to the dark side. Mr. Uncle Mike, if you want to salvage yourself in the eyes of our listeners with any enduring memories you have of the one, the only Miss Elizabeth, have at it. And then B, if you have time in this non-Uncle Mike type of day, what is lighting up your tape, sir?
Well, I guess I need to take my own advice of what I tell my son when taking his tests. Listen to the question. I didn't listen to the question clearly, and I really screwed myself up. And so now I have to live with that shame. But yeah, plenty of memories with Miss Elizabeth and with the mega powers. And, unfortunately, she had a tragic end to her life. But really sad. And what it made me think of in the question is I thought you were talking about a wrestler, which to my demise, I did not listen to the question well enough. So I'll have to tell my son about how this shameful habit even hurt me later in life and for his schooling when he's listening to questions for his tests. But I was thinking about WrestleMania 1 when Cyndi Lauper was managing Wendy Richter and she was wrestling the Fabulous Moolah back in the early 80s when it all began. So that's what it made me think of. And fun fact on women's wrestling, this summer, I was actually at a football camp, at the same football camp where it was the ex-husband and the son of Medusa Michelli herself, famous wrestler of the 80s and 90s. So it was quite the honor just to, now granted, there was like 200 kids there, but nonetheless, it was quite the honor to be able to say that I was in the same camp as the ex-husband and the son of Medusa Michelli.
Did you ever watch any of that Glow when you were a kid? It was always on after the Saturday morning cartoons. All of a sudden, these ladies would come on and start wrestling. Did you ever watch any of that?
Not really.
The
no.
Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling?
Yes, the Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling.
That is a great show.
Medusa Michelli was one of them. She was like one of the top ones back in the day.
I think I remember Mount Fuji was one of the ones. They had the giant Japanese one, as I recall. And the Netflix show they made off of it, kind of the fictionalized version, also a surprisingly good show. I was surprised at how good that was. But then again, I digress. Uncle Mike, sir, what is lighting up your tape in today's markets?
So in looking at it right now, we held 4,000 in the SPX earlier today. We got to 4,003. And then we did go below the 4,000 mark in the futures. We got to 39.97 half, and we went below the 400 mark in SPY. We got down to 399.34. So far, so good. We're holding it at this stage, but it's a key number. But the reality of this is, with this key number, the next key numbers are a little bit further down. And
They're a lot further down, yeah.
The concern that I have with this is that what I'm looking at, the next key number that I have, we're probably around 37.5. You could make 37.50. You could make a case for support. And the other part of it that I think is important with that is that the close of 2020 was 37.56. And so until we get to there, from a technical standpoint, we're already below the key moving average numbers. That's kind of the next stop. And granted, anything can happen. So we could create a new level of support at 38.30 or something like that. But for now, from a charting standpoint, that's the next level of it. And that level also happens to be right around the close of 2020. We're at the levels now, at least at the NASDAQ, that we were in November of 2020. So the NASDAQ has really gotten the tar kicked out of it recently. And so we're really at a crossroads right now. And you're hoping you don't take the one less traveled by in the market, whether you're going long or short at this point, because that will make all the difference. And it'll make all the difference in a bad way, because you want to go the road more traveled, because that's where more money is going to go, if you will. So this is one area with which Robert Frost would not be correct in this marketplace. Now, the one thing that is somewhat I think is a little bit of a bullish sign is that we actually are getting a little bit of buying in the 10-year note. We have had a unique year this year in 2022 in that bonds are down and stocks are down. That does not happen very often. So people with 60-40 portfolios, that's something to where it's not been a pleasant year by any means. But we are starting to get a little bit of buyers at these lower levels with the 10-year note. Now it's around the 3% level at this stage. And so if we get some stability in the 10-year note, I don't know if necessarily a rash of buyers to the 10-year note will run up the S&P 500, but I think if we can get some type of stability here, it could be helpful to the market. But once again, 4,000 is a very real number at this stage, and I'm going to be watching it throughout the day today, along with all the tons of headline risk that we've had for, oh gosh, it seems like forever. So that's what I'm looking at right now, and that's what's lighting up my tape.
So if he closed below 4,000 today, are there any major adjustments coming in the Uncle Mike portfolios or positions, sir? You bracing for 3,700 next or 3,750?
I mean, in the buy and hold section, no, we're still buying and holding. The only thing that I'd be adjusting is I'd be rolling down a longer term put spread that's very boring, but everything else that we've had hedged, we have hedged, and it's either hedged or buy and held. And so there's really nothing else to adjust in those other areas. But for the aggressive portfolio, for the boring long-term put spread that's still out of the money, I'm still very committed to not letting it go in the money. And that's the only thing I would really do with it right now.
Well, we asked you guys a similar question out there right now. We were thinking about doing this. Mr. Rhodes, the once and future Dr. Vic, easy for me to say, suggested this as our poll for this week on TWIFO last week. So we thought that was a good idea. We ran with it. We said, as a results of our poll from a week or two ago, we asked you guys, are you guys buying and holding right now? Are you hedging? Are you in cash? A good chunk of you are in cash right now. So we thought, and you said you're waiting to BTFD. So the next logical question is, where do you start BTFDing? What is your level? And that's what our question of the week is this week. We said many of you are in cash right now looking to BTFD in your SPY or SPX. How low do we have to go? What is the limbo bar we have to cross before you pull the trigger? Quite simply, where do you plan to start buying again in the S&P 500? We said around here. So at the time you posted this, we were flirting with the 4,000 level. So right around 4,000 in the S. We have sold off a wee bit from the highs there. Or the next support level, which is usually seems to be somewhere around 3,700. We put it in at 3,700. Or you want it to go back further. You want to get down to the pre-pandemic high in the S, which was somewhere around 33.75 or so. So that's our next level. Or you're in full on lookout below. Remember, we just did that question of the week. We just resurfaced that from March 24th of 2020, where people were fading the 2,400 level in the S&P. Maybe you're of that mindset. So we said, look out below. You're not buying in until we're back below 3,000. Right now, early voting here, we have a tie between the next support level at 3,700 and the pre-pandemic level of 33.75, both of them with exactly a third of the voting. Around here, so around the 4,000 level, some of you are comfortable getting long here, 19% and 14.3% saying, look out below. You're not coming back in until we darken the doorstep of 3,000 and below. You guys want to play along? That's our question of the week. It'll be live throughout the week. At Options is the place to go to make your voice heard. Let's see what's being heard in the markets right now from an overall volume perspective. And as you might expect on a day like today, you might expect a little bit of paper, and we are seeing that. VIX at about a little bit shy of 400,000 contracts right now, 392. That's not nothing because the ADV is only 479, so it seems like we're going to eclipse that today. SPY at about 5.5 million. The ADV 6.6 million. So SPY looking very robust. I think every time we get to 4,000 and bounce off of it, you're seeing more paper churning and burning in SPY. Similar deal in the S. The S a little bit north of 1.25 million contracts right now. That's a pretty robust day. If the S is flirting with 1 million, that's pretty active. 1.25, almost 1.3 million. That's nothing to sneeze at. ADV 1.85, so that has ticked up a bit in the S as well. And small caps, at least the IWM flavor, they are, I think the technical term is on freaking fire. IWM right now, 850,000 contracts. The ADV is only 791. So IWM already hitting its level out there and more. 3.75% is what small caps are off today. So everyone's focusing, on the NASDAQ being kind of the just abomination leader in terms of annihilation. But small caps, they are coming for it right now. Let's see, we are 175 in IWM. So you're talking 1750 out there, all you rut folks out there. So well shy of that 2,000 level. Remember, it seemed like we were just celebrating it not too long ago on TWIFO, back with Sean when we first crossed that 2,000 level in the Russell 2000. Now back in the rearview mirror. Let's go out to the single names, see what's lighting it up out there. Sometimes when it's these kind of crazy macro-heavy days when everything's being dragged down, sometimes we don't see the single names lighting it up, but we are seeing some decent paper. Nothing blowing the doors off, but there are some sparks of paper out here. Again, it only cost you 211,000 contracts to break into the top 10 most actives today. You're not talking 300 or 350 like you see on some crazy days. So single names are kind of getting caught up in the storm out there today. Again, number 10, that gets you to Bank of America, 211,000. By the way, our friends across the street, Boeing, the other, their ticker symbol friend over there, BA, not going to be our friends across the street much longer, announcing they are moving out of Chicago. So no more of those delicious lunches in the Boeing cafeteria across the street or their Wednesday barbecue on the river. They haven't done that since the pandemic, but it used to be awesome. They had music and barbecue and all kinds of fun. So I guess no more of the delicious Boeing lunches across the street. I shall miss them. Bank of America, though, it's symbol twin in at number 10, 211,000 contracts. Number 9 is the day that ends in Y. It's a Musk name, so you know Twitter's got to be doing some paper out there. Man, Musk, if anything else, say what you will about him. He is definitely a gift to options brokers because all his names do a fair amount of paper out there. And Twitter, number 9 today, 229,000 contracts, right around 48.40 or so off, nearly 3%, about 2.8%. So I forgot who our listener was who wrote in with this 50 double vertical in July in Twitter. It's like that's coming off a little bit today. Still got some time, though. Well, again, you got to July. We need a little bit more clarification on when they're going to vote for this deal, the shareholders. And then I think we'll know how your spread's going to fare. Number 8, good old Facebook. How is the old FB holding up in all this maelstrom of madness? Back below the 200 level, just barely, 199.70, off about $4 or a little over 2% today. And it got down to 196.60, so it has broken through 200 a little bit. So it's trying to stay at the 200 level, kind of like the S&P, trying to stay at 4,000. Going to be a challenge, though. Number 7, this is the name we haven't seen in here for some time. And when we did in the past, it was usually positive. It was the stake in this name was lifting everyone associated with it, including Ford. This is Rivian, ticker symbol RIVN, trading 23 and a quarter, listeners. That sounds low. That's because it is. It's off 19% or $5.50 just today. It wasn't that long ago, listeners. Remember in all those crazy, heady days of running up in Ford getting to, 15 and then 20 and then 25 and people loading up on the 2025s and 2325s and the 2530 verticals and Ford and just upside palooza. Well, that also corresponded with Rivian's run to 179.5 back in November of last year. So Rivian was just lifting Ford and everything else associated with it. This thing was on the rampage. It has now just taken an enormous drubbing. One of the many names of the high flyers of the pandemic era that have now they've just come for them, cut their legs out. 23.38 is where Rivian is now, taking another drubbing today because Ford dumping a whole bunch, 8 million shares worth of Rivian, saying, you know what? Yeah, we're done with this noise. Number 7, Rivian, 237,000. Number 6, it's your favorite gold miner. Oh, yeah, they also show some movies. This is AMC, 255,000 contracts at number 6. Number 5, it's pretty boring. It's NVIDIA. It's always around 5 or 4. 339,000 today for NVIDIA, number 5. Number 4, it's Palantir. If you're listening to Options Oddities, myself and the Rock Lobster have some skin in the game now on Palantir. When we were talking about the 8.5 puts, I was close to going down to the 8 puts for a quarter. Ended up not doing those. And in hindsight, that would have been a little bit better because stock trading around $7.50 right now, off $2 or 21% just today. So they came for this one. This is the name that people thought was fairly safe in this era because they're getting a lot of big government contracts, a lot of defense spending. A lot of that tends to accrete to a name like this, but it seems like a lot of their government contracts were slowing down. They missed their numbers and their guidance was a little bit lower, and the street never likes that. So they're coming for this one today. So this is named another high flyer. Not too long ago, June 28th of last year, 27.38 hit its high for the year by around almost $30, 29.30. It hit it a couple of times, it seems like, in June and September, and flirted with it again in November before just taking it on the chin now to around $7.50. So Palantir, well, you folks, you pro members listening to Oddities, were you guys playing around Palantir? Were you keeping your powder dry? I know the Rock Lobster is in for, I do believe, a higher level, so he was messaging me this morning with his tales of woe. We'll get to more of that later in the week on Oddities, listeners. Number 3, it's AMD, 397,000 contracts. Numero due, another Musk T name, driving some paper today. This is Tesla, 749,000 contracts. And number one with a kind of meager bull. Like you said, it's not really a single name day. It's really more about the macro stuff today. Apple, 871,000 contracts. It's still off $4 or 2.6% today. So this one, they keep trying to come for Apple, and it seems like the bulls out there say, no, we like this name, and so they keep trying to lift it, but Apple back down to, like I said, 153 and change right now. This is pretty much, it's a couple of points above the low it hit in March. It hit 150.62 in March, so we're not quite there yet. But outside of that, you got to go all the way back to November of last year to really see these types of levels again. So they certainly are off the recent highs. They were flirting around close to 180 back in late March there. So, yeah, interesting times. Apple can't even really manage to resist the great sucking sound that is the market today. In terms of earnings, we had obviously Palantir today. We had the Duck, a.k.a. Duke Energy, popping off today. And that favorite gold miner / movie theater chain, AMC, also popping off today. Peloton tomorrow. What's going on with them? They were going to be sold. They're not going to be sold. All that kind of fun. Roblox, Coinbase tomorrow, EA, Electronic Arts Wednesday, Yeti, Krispy Kreme, Wendy's, good old Diz. Where's Diz hanging out? This name is kind of, they were already back down to their pre-pandemic levels. 108 now for Disney. My goodness, they've fallen off quite a bit. Yeah, they are February 21st. They were at 138.97 of 2020 before all the sell-off hit. Then they got down in the madness. They got down to about $86. So yes, they are well below. 30 points below where they were right before the sell-off. My goodness, a lot of controversy out there in the Disneyland right now. I'll leave you to sort that out. We won't get political here on the show. Rivian also on Wednesday, Beyond Meat and Bumble. Are the ladies looking for love? I guess we'll find out on Wednesday. Thursday, Six Flags backed. They were on the crypto show not too long ago. Check them out. In fact, we have their counterpart, their rival out there, formerly known as Ledger X. Now, FTX US derivatives coming on Crypto Rundown a little bit later today. That should be fascinating. Find out what's really going on in the world of their crypto options here in the US. There's only a handful of exchanges that are approved. You got CME. You have Bakkt, who's kind of backing away from it now, pun intended. And you have formerly Ledger X, now FTX. And FTX, they have some resources behind them. They have named a stadium or two after these folks. So they got some capital. So we'll see what they're putting it to work on as they're really focusing on the US crypto options market. Should be fascinating coming up in about, a little bit later after this show. Let's look really quickly. Palantir before the bell. They were at a 9.5 when we last ran these numbers. These reports, by the way, hot off the presses from our friends over there at Oratz. $9.5. They're a wee bit south of that now. They're at 7.5. So they're pricing in nearly 15%. They delivered 21%. Oh, don't I know it? The Duck, a.k.a. Duke Energy. They were before the bell today as well. 111.32 is where they were trading. They're pricing in 2.5%. They delivered about 2.3%. So no craziness there. It seems like Palantir is really, really the outperformer of the morning out here. They seem like they had some strength in this environment. So surprising that they're going to underperform. And the weakness coming on their government contracts, that was seen as maybe a bit of a source of strength in this environment right now. People are ramping up defense spending. You think that would accrete to a name like Palantir, but apparently not. EA tomorrow after the bell, 115.25 is where they were trading. They're pricing in 638 listeners. In the past, they've moved 345. So wow, they're pricing in a metric ton of juice. What's going on in EA? Maybe the Activision deal making gaming a little bit more frothy, a little more volatile right now. EA is one of the last big players that no one has acquired. Is someone going to come make the bid? Can Sony even afford to buy EA? I don't know. That would be a huge deal if they acquired them. They'd own Madden and everything else at that point. Maybe the regulators will come sniffing around that one then, but still interesting stuff. Maybe that's why they're pricing in so much juice in EA. We've also got on the 11th, we've got good old DNUT, DNUT. This is, of course, Krispy Kreme on the 11th before the bell. 13.12 is where they were trading. They're pricing in $1.20. In the past, they've moved 80 cents, so 50% more vol. A lot of juice in Donut, good old Donut. We've also got Yeti on the 11th before the bell. This is Yeti Holdings, ticker symbol Yeti. They were 47.25. They're pricing in $5.50. In the past, they moved 288. So they are pricing in the juice there as well. Not a name I watch very actively, so I'll have to go check out why they're pricing in so much juice. And then, of course, Bumble. I always joke about Match has the online love cornered, but they don't have the ladies portion covered, which is Bumble. Ticker symbol BMBL. 21.91 is where they were trading as of this report. They're pricing in 361. In the past, they've moved 407. Remember, they don't have a lot of data on this name. It's a relatively new IPO. So the pricing had a little bit less juice in Bumble, which is kind of interesting. Is that the wrong move? We shall see. Let's look really quickly to Rivian. They're making a lot of news right now. 11th after the bell. 28 3/4 is where they were trading. 381 is what they were pricing in. $2.50 is what they've moved in the past. Oh, my producer telling me EA announcing a Lord of the Rings mobile game this morning. Maybe that's why there's so much. That appeals to me. But yeah, I don't know if that's why their straddle is roughly double what it was in the past, but intriguing stuff nonetheless. Maybe that's where EA is getting all that juice from. I would certainly like to believe it is Tolkien-inspired vol. That would be fun. Season-wise, this week looking pretty good so far, probably because of Palantir and others outperforming to the downside. This week, 127%. Week 2, 86%. Week 1, 67%. So right now we're hanging out at 102%. Slight outperformance, thanks pretty much entirely to this week. So we shall see if that continues. Meanwhile, it's time for the show to continue right on into the Odd Block.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by theoptionsinsider.com. It's time for the Odd Block.
All right, everybody, let us unleash the Eye of Sauron. Hey, appropriately enough, given this new Lord of the Rings game that is announcing beta this morning, that we unleash the Eye of Sauron upon the market, see what it finds. It is first fixing its gaze on a name we haven't talked about in quite some time. This is American Express, ticker symbol AXP. AXP. Trading right now, 161.78, off about 5 1/3 or 3 1/4% today. My goodness. On the year, let's see, a year ago, they were trading 158.68. They're at 161.78. So they're a wee bit up on that right now. They're up slightly on the year now, about 2%. But they had quite a run. They got up to 187 on October 22nd. Then they got crushed again in November, listeners. It looks like their low for the year of 149.89 on December 1st. So in the span of about a month, they went from 182 to 149, actually. And then they shot right back up again in February 16th, they hit their high for the year of 199 double. And then they fell off a cliff again a couple of weeks later, on March 7th, 159.13. And then shot back up again on March 21st to 190 again. My goodness, a lot of vol for Amex. And they've been bouncing around, and they're kind of coming back down right now to 161.78. Man. This is a juicy, juicy name. My goodness, this thing's all over the place. Well, let's see what our Eye of Sauron found. Maybe we can make some sense of this madness, listeners. Our Eye of Sauron is going out to September. In particular, it's looking a little meaty here, as they found someone looks like picking up 20,000 of the September 140s. Yes, I said 140s. The stock's at 161.78. So these are clearly $21.78 in the money calls. He bought them for $29.80, so paying about $8 over for the privilege of going all the way out to September. That's about a 44 vol, if you are wondering, listeners. The stock was pretty much right about here, 162 and change, when he put these up. There are going to be earnings between now and September. The next announcement is in July. Mr. Meatball, we don't see a ton of these very meaty, some might say beefy, some might squash those together and say meefy calls. Certainly not in a name like American Express. You think this has the whiff of some stock substitution, sir?
It certainly feels like it's stock substitution. That is 100% what it looks like to me. Is, someone doesn't want to shell out the full $162 a share that Amex is, and they're instead using calls to replace the position.
Are you surprised at how volatile Amex has been over the past year? I certainly am. That chart it's like a biotech.
Everything's been volatile. But if you want to go long, Amex out to September, you're saving a decent amount of dough. They paid what was the price they paid?
Nearly $30, $29.80.
Yeah, so but that's still saving them about a little over $130 a share on 2 million shares. That is that's not a small amount of, it's $260 million they don't have to put up to use the calls. Now they're paying the $7 in premium, but that's what I'm looking at.
Yeah, I don't hate this approach either. I'm not saying I love getting super bullish in AXP here, but if you're going to do it, if you wanted to get long the stock or this, I probably would prefer this for all the reasons we've outlined before. This is an interesting time to be exploring stock substitution, listeners. Obviously, you're getting much more capital efficiency than even buying the stock on margin, and your downside is limited. The most you can lose in this is about $30, listeners, where if you bought the stock, you could lose what were they at the time? 162.5, I believe. So you could lose $162.50. So wee bit different risk profile on these two trades. What do you think about stock substitution here? And this name or some other names? Hit us up. Let us know. Speaking of hitting us up, our listeners, they're so savvy. Our chat right now saying for oddities and odd block, they like GOOS, GOOS. It comes up if it comes up. The company attracts the Lululemon Yeezy shoes, AirPod wearing kids. They will pay anything for that coat. I see a lot of moms at my kids' school wearing those coats as well. So it's not just the kids. The ladies tend to like them too. Yes, you are correct. Our Eye of Sauron next fixed its gaze upon, I do believe this is the first time we talked about this one, Canada Goose, ticker symbol GOOS, GOOS. As he mentioned, it's that coat. Looks like every other coat, except for it has that little label on it. People will pay 2X, 3X for that little label out there. You see them all over Chicago in the wintertime, listeners. They are everywhere. Canada Goose, let's see, trading right now $19 even, off about $1 or nearly 5% today. On the year, this one, this looks like another pandemic annihilation. A year ago, it was trading 43.44, listeners. Kind of hovered at that level for most of the year until November. Then it shot up to 53.64 on November 16th. That was the high for the year. And then it shot right back down to 36.55. And it's been kind of trending lower ever since to where we are right now, $19 even. So you lost 56% if you had this stock over the past year. Kind of a rough year. But it seems like, again, they're coming up on earnings, so there's a lot of paper going up out there today. Quite a storm of paper, I should say, this week. But it seems like someone is drawing the line in the sand. They're saying 16 this far and no further, and I will collect 30 cents to sell that strike a whole bunch of times. The first block that caught our eye was 14,447 of the May 16 puts going up pretty much on the bid. 30 cents, again, nearly 15,000 times. That is a 110 vol, if you are wondering, listeners. Then they liked it so much they came in and did some more, 3,757 for 25 cents. Obviously, that bid got crushed, so it wasn't 30-cent bid anymore. They managed to sneak, actually, right after the other print, they did get another 1,500 off for 30 cents. And that was it for the 30-cent kind. They had to go down to 25 cents. But they kept selling. I think a total of about 20,000 had traded by the time we kicked off the show. So, Mr. Meatball, looks like we got a little bit of the old line in the sand here, this time in the uber trendy Canada Goose Holdings. I'm sure you're familiar with this name. You probably don't wear a lot of Canada Goose down there in Texas, but I'm sure your wife likes this brand. What are your thoughts on Canada Goose getting annihilated this year and someone drawing the line in the sand at 16, saying this far, sir, and no farther?
Yeah, well, it is interesting. And the funny thing is those puts are now 40.45. Yeah, they've sold 29,000 of those plus today. It looks like they're going for 30. Definite line in the sand, maybe trying to take delivery. It's about $3 away. So call it, I don't know, 15% out of the money. I'll be very interested to see what happens with those. Earnings are on the 12th. It looks like somewhere around the 12th. So that is really kind of interesting. So is Canada Goose Holdings headquartered? Where is this headquartered? Because if it's in the United States, they need to change their name because
I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is.
They're an American goose. if they're not headquartered.
It's like, hey, I have something to add to this real quick.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
If they are in America, they do need to be American goose, because otherwise in court, if they ever get sued for this, their goose is cooked.
Oh God. I'm tempted to cancel the strategy block. First, you have the big fail on Miss Elizabeth. Now this quote unquote humor you're subjecting us to. I don't know, Mr. Uncle Mike. I may have to save our listeners from the strategy block, but I will be nice. We are coming up against it. We did also see really quickly, listeners, two big blocks of massive calls going up this morning in Vistra Corp, ticker symbol VST. This is a integrated retail and power generation company based in Irving, Texas. They're trading $24.16 right now. A year ago, they're trading $16. They hit their high for the year not that long ago, back in April of 27.10. So they're close to the high for the year. Someone coming in hours apart, which is weird, buying 10,000 first off of the July 27s for 90 cents. So pretty much close to the offer, kind of splitting the uprights. There was marked as a spread, but sometimes the market spread, they mean with stocks. They did it tied with stock at 25.56, which is higher. If they bought these calls and sold stock, they're looking good there. And then they also came in about an hour, looks like an hour, 2 hours later, actually. And it looks like they also bought the 25s in July. So 10,000 times as well. So at first you might think, well, they're legging into a vertical, but that's weird. 2 hours apart. That's a lot of delta risk. And then looks like they lifted the offers on both. Maybe they just wanted to dump more shares. Either way, two big blocks of stock going up in VST, a couple of hours apart. We'll keep an eye on these to see how they perform as well. But now it is time, listeners, to unleash that most humorous of fellows, a.k.a. Uncle Mike, because it is time for the strategy block.
It's time to dispense options, wit, wisdom, and education. It's time for the strategy block.
All right, everybody, welcome to the strategy block, the portion of the show where Uncle Mike breaks down the world of options and some wit and wisdom along the way. You'll be happy to know, Uncle Mike, Canada Goose is headquartered in Toronto, Canada, sir. So there you go. The goose is not cooked yet.
That makes me happy. That's a good thing. Toronto, home of the Sky Dome with WrestleMania 6, I believe. But anyway, what I want to talk about today is that you may be looking to buy some put options right now to hedge your portfolio because it's starting to get a little bit painful. And of course, puts are going to be a lot more expensive now than when they were 400 points ago in the S&P 500. But I still want to go through some things with which to look at when doing so. So today we're going to talk about strike price selection for put buying. First off, just have an understanding with puts, it's the opposite of calls in terms of being in the money, at the money, or out of the money. Well, at the money is still the same, but an in the money put means that the strike price is actually is greater than the price of the underlying, as opposed to a call where an in-the-money call is less than the price of the underlying. So in other words, let's say XYZ stock is at 50, the 55 put is considered in the money. And so that's kind of where we want to start with. An in-the-money put, if you go far enough in the money, it's going to be similar to shorting the stock or selling the stock short in terms of the risk reward. The further in the money you go, the more it's going to be like that, meaning that decreases in volatility, time decay, things like that are not going to have as much of an effect when you are buying an in the money put. And so that can be beneficial if you want it to be that way. But of course, the disadvantage of buying an in the money put means that you're going to have to pay more money than what you would for an at the money or an out of the money. Now, if you were to buy an at the money put, what that does is that entitles you to all of the downside of the underlying right where you buy it. And when doing that, you're essentially just paying 100% extrinsic value, meaning that if the underlying goes against you or stays the same, then you're going to lose all your money. Now, the benefit of it is gamma, meaning that as the stock goes lower in value, it's the equivalent of shorting more stock as the market's going down and not paying for it. And that can be very exciting. Now, once again, though, the risk, which is there's always a risk to things like this, the risk, of course, is that you're going to be paying nothing but extrinsic value to get that. And finally, there's out of the money puts, meaning if XYZ stock is at 50, you're buying a 45 put or a 47 put, whatever the case may be. Now, of course, the main advantage of this is the fact that they cost the least amount of money. The main disadvantage to this is the fact that you are going to have the least likely percentage chance of winning on the trade when doing so. Now, you could win enough on the trade to where it's worth it, but you are the least likely to win out of these three choices. The other advantage that exists on this is that you are going to gain deltas as the underlying goes your way, meaning down. And then the final advantage of this is the fact that typically stocks and implied volatility have an inverse relationship, meaning as stocks go lower, implied volatility goes higher. And that can be a benefit when buying a put option. So as you're long this put option, as implied volatility does go higher, assuming it does, it's never guaranteed, but assuming it does, then you have the ability to participate on implied volatility going your way, as well as the underlying. So that's kind of a sample of the advantages and disadvantages of different strike price selections when buying a put. For more information on this, tune into my YouTube channel. We should have the video on this out by likely tomorrow. St. Charles Wealth Management, type it in.
Meanwhile, we have to keep on rolling. It is time, listeners, to go around the block.
It's time to tell you what we'll be watching on our trading screens until the next episode. It's time for Around the Block.
All right, listeners, time to go around the block. I think we're all just watching the great sucking sound that is the market right now. We are below the 4,000 level now, listeners. SPY, when I last checked, was like 399. SPX flirting with it as well. VIX still hanging out around 34 and change. So as we kind of alluded to at the top of the show, VIX perhaps not responding the way you might think. But again, we have had a few shocks to the system out there. Check in really quickly on our question of the week right now. You should be able to find it at options pinned right there for your voting convenience, listeners. And we have evolved a little bit. Right now, it's 32% of you saying you're not buying in again until the pre-pandemic level, which is around 33.75 in the S. And we have a tie for second place with around here. So you're comfortable buying here around 4,000, 28%. Also 28% of you saying the next support level, which is around 3,700, 3,750, pick your poison, somewhere in that level. You're thinking about buying in there. And then 12% of you right now saying, look out below. I'm not diving in until we're back below 3,000. What's your vote? At options is the place to go to make your voice heard, listeners, as we go around the block. Let's go out to the man I may see in person this week, as I am also heading to the Southern Volatility Mecca known as Texas. Mr. Meatball, A, are you excited for the big OIC show coming to a town adjacent to yours? And B, what are you watching for the rest of this week?
Yeah, I'm really excited to see you here in San Antonio. I think that's going to be great. I'm watching these levels, 4,000, 3,750, and like you said, the pre-pandemic level. I think that's a really key level, and I want to see whether that one holds. But we're pushing against 4,000 right now. I really want to see the VIX break out before I start thinking we're at some sort of level where we can start nibbling on buys, because it's just really bad. Where everything, this market, it's just relentlessly dropping. So I want to see if we do kind of what we did with 4,100 this week, right? This was our third dip below 4,100. This one looks like it's going to stick. And then are we going to be able to recover from there?
Does have a wee bit of the whiff of weirdness, strangeness about it. I'm with you that I thought maybe VIX would be doing a little bit more on a day like today, but we shall see. Mr. Uncle Mike, sir, at least for today, the bulls not firmly in charge of this market for the first time in quite some time, sir. What are you watching until we can gather here together on Thursday, sir?
I'm watching the 4,000 mark. I think that's very key right now. And I thought as I was talking about put options on the strategy block, we were going to break it on the SPX, but we did not. But no, I'm watching 4,000. I think that's the key level as a market participant right now. Also watching silver, SLV, we're sneaking around the 20 mark, and just watching the headlines as per usual.
All right, everybody. That music means we have come to the conclusion of the first of many shows that await you on the network this week. So if you're saying you need a little bit more in your ear holes, don't worry. All you cool kids in the secret club, just hang out. I'll be back soon with the crypto rundown with the president of what used to be known as Ledger X, now FTX US Derivatives, So if you want to know what's going on in the world of crypto options here in the U.S., why FTX, who has some capital to put to work, why they put some of it to work acquiring one of the few approved names in the U.S. crypto options trading world, and you're going to find out a little bit later. Hang out in the chat, have some fun. We'll pull some fun. Maybe we'll give you a sneak peek of the that panel I did a couple weeks ago. We'll put that out there for you pro folks because we like you. Everybody else, you got to wait till it hits the network on demand. Then, of course, after that, coming back after that later today, it's like a triple pro week this week because we got Mr. Tony Saliba coming up to answer your options questions a little bit after the crypto rundown. Then I have to pack my bags so I got to get the hell out of Dodge for Texas. By the way, I mentioned that I will be on a plane coming back from Tejas during Thursday's show. So perhaps Uncle Mike or perhaps the Rock Lobster or the Meatball will have to sit in the big chair in my stead. So let's go around the horn. First, Mr. Uncle Mike. I'm tempted to not say you because you did not guess Miss Elizabeth today. I don't think you should be rewarded with the big hosting chair. But what are your thoughts? A, if folks want to reach out to you, where should they go? What should they do? And B, what are your thoughts on the possibility of stepping into the big chair on Thursday, sir?
Hey, if you need me, I'll do it. I'm happy to do it. Nonetheless, happy to do that. If you're interested in working with a financial advisor who delves in the option product, if it's appropriate for the client, of course, feel free to reach out to me. You can follow me on Twitter at Mike TOSAW, TOSAW. Check out my website, stcharleswealth.com, or you can watch my YouTube channel. Type in St. Charles Wealth Management. Please subscribe to all of it. It's a lot of fun.
There you go. stcharleswealth.com is the place to go to begin your journey. Let us know who you want holding down the big chair in my absence, listeners. The Uncleist of Mikes or probably the Rockingest of Lobsters. Those are usually the two who are on the Thursday show. Maybe the Meatball will make a surprise appearance. We don't know. Mr. Meatball, sir, if you want to throw your hat into the big chair for Thursday, let us know now. And B, if folks want to reach out to you guys in between episodes, where should they go? What should they do?
Go to optionpit.com. I'm writing VIX and volatility content every day, macro content. Best place to read actionable ideas on the web, optionpit.com. I am tied up, so it's going to be the Rock Lobster. Maybe we should just get a substitute deep-voiced option trader to host the show.
Well, if you can find a good one, we shall see. A substitute deep-voiced options trader. They are few and far between, unfortunately, sir. As unfortunately, check it out, optionpit.com to learn more. Like I said, maybe we'll see the Meatball in person this week. It's been some time, nigh on, since he fled the environs of Chicago. So intriguing stuff afoot. I have to get on out of here, but we'll be back in a little bit for all you pro listeners with the crypto rundown. And of course, after that, exclusively for you pro folks, with the pro Q&A, none other than Mr. Tony Saliba. So obviously tomorrow, no pro Q&As. I will be traveling tomorrow. Then Wednesday, you're going to get your usual dose. Everybody on demand, you have to wait until Wednesday to get Options Bootcamp and Options Playbook Radio. All you pro folks already have it in your pro feed. And then on Thursday, we'll see what we get. When the cat's away, the mice will play on our next episode of the Option Block. Stay safe out there, everybody.
You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.